In part 2, we discussed the Lamb family dynasty from around the time of 2010 to 2020, in which Daystar continued to grow and predators roam the halls. One Lamb family member and his wife who worked at Daystar, who we called Mark and Sarah, had a baby. What should have been a happy time for the couple was made disturbing when another member of the Lamb family made inappropriate jokes to them and kept trying to be in the changing room when the baby was getting their diaper changed. Then, on one of the Lamb family vacations, that family member was found sitting in the baby's room next to the baby alone in the dark. When Joni was made aware of this family member's behavior, Joni told Mark and Sarah that some Christians just have different senses of humor, and that the room they found that inappropriate family member in was their safe space. According to Mark, over the following months, Joni harassed him with multiple meetings, berating him for not coming around the family anymore and threatening his job. Mark and Sarah walked away from Daystar and were shunned by the Lambs. In 2016, Rachel Lamb married a man named Joshua Brown, an Australian and member of the Christian band Planet Shakers. And during the 2020 pandemic, after receiving nearly $4 million in PPP money, even though Daystar is tax exempt, they bought a jet. The Lamb family used the Daystar jet to fly to Florida for a summer vacation, and this photo shows all family members, minus the kids, that went on that vacation. It was during that time that a major family feud happened after a family member who was being called Pete was found in the kids' room while Jonathan and Suzy's daughter, who were referring to as baby Lamb, was naked. The 5-year-old was getting ready to change into her bathing suit, and Pete, who had heard Suzy tell baby Lamb to go get changed for the pool, followed her upstairs. This scared Suzy, and she immediately had Jonathan go up there to confront Pete. See, Jonathan and Suzy had been watching Pete for some time after Jonathan's sister Rebecca and her husband JW wrote a letter to them, warning them that Pete had been inappropriately kissing baby Lamb all over, and they found his behavior disturbing. Pete would also come over to Jonathan and Suzy's house when they weren't there to play with baby Lamb and her brother. The nanny told them she found Pete to be creepy. Then there was the time on a previous vacation that Pete told Suzy that baby Lamb opened the bathroom door on him and saw him in full frontal nudity, but it had been an accident, so he said. There was also the time that baby Lamb and her brother had a slumber party at Pete and his wife's house. After that night, baby Lamb's behavior completely changed. She shut down and would only let Suzy come near her. Pete also worked at Daystar, and baby Lamb would run away from Pete whenever he came into a room where she was. So once the big blow-up happened on this family vacation in 2021, instead of listening to Jonathan and Suzy, Marcus and Joni wouldn't hear a word of it and immediately declared Pete innocent. Marcus kept going off about how the enemy was trying to attack Daystar, even though this had nothing to do with Daystar and everything to do with his granddaughter. Joni told Suzy she needed to apologize to Pete and his wife, but Suzy refused. Suzy said Joni even went as far as to blame baby Lamb, saying it was the child who took her clothes off. Marcus was insistent that Pete was being falsely accused. Jonathan and Suzy were ready to go to the police when 1 week later, Marcus pulled Jonathan and JW into his office to tell them they could now breathe easy because Pete had been forensically cleared. But Marcus was lying, and Jonathan and Suzy would never be able to confront him about this lie because only 3 months later, he was dead. The president of Daystar and a proud anti-vaxxer died of COVID in November of 2021. In part 2, we did a deep dive on Dr. Doug Weiss, the self-proclaimed recovered sex addict with a counseling center. 7 women spoke to the Roy's report saying how their marriages were better off before seeing Doug and that they ended up leaving his counseling center more traumatized. Although some of their husbands had cheated on them, whether through affairs or with sex workers, Doug diagnosed them with a made-up term he calls intimacy anorexia, blaming these women for withholding intimacy from their cheating husbands. After Marcus's death, Joni was single with an empire to run, and this is when Doug moved in. Only 8 weeks and 2 days after Marcus died, Doug Weiss filed for divorce from his wife of over 30 years. In the last part of this saga, Doug will infiltrate the Lamb family, wooing Joni and walking her down the aisle while the Lamb children beg her not to. Joni will force everyone into accepting Doug at Daystar, and when Jonathan refuses, there'll be hell to pay. Joni will not only have a tracker put in Jonathan's car and have him, Suzy, and their children followed by a private investigator, she'll also fire Suzy and have a man with a weapon and bulletproof vest come to their home. In this final video, the Daystar Mafia rears its ugly head. Jonathan and Suzy end up taking their story public, and the entire house of cards begins to collapse.
I woke up, opened my eyes, and looked out to the darkening skies. The world has gone crazy as blood fills the streets. Steal, kill, destroy, the cycle repeats, but we cannot give in to these destructive forces that many digest like a meal with 5 courses.
This is part 3 of the rise and fall of Daystar.
And drink up the lies as we confuse our youth. Oh, but don't lose heart, and don't you dare.
Before we dive into the documentary, please allow me to tell you about today's sponsor, Morgan & Morgan. When you're seriously hurt, your injury could be worth millions. Insurance companies often try and lowball clients' claims, but Morgan & Morgan will fight to get you the money you deserve. Morgan & Morgan doesn't settle for lowball offers. Just in the past couple of months, they've secured major verdicts, including $12 million in Florida, which is 34 times the highest insurance offer, $26 million in Philadelphia, which is 40 times the highest insurance offer, and $6.8 million in New York, which is 25 times the highest insurance offer. The best part is, you pay absolutely nothing unless you win. If you are in an accident or injured in any way, you should know how to protect your rights. Don't overthink it. Take action to protect your rights, and Morgan & Morgan will fight to get you the compensation you deserve if you become their client. Did you know you can start a claim with America's largest injury law firm in just a click? It's easy. You can start your claim now with Morgan & Morgan at www.forthepeople.com/goodgirl or click the link below in the description box. Now, back to the video. Doug Weiss filed for divorce from Lisa Lamb Weiss on January 27th of 2022. 7 weeks later, Joni bought a building lot down the road from her mansion with a permit to build a 9,700 square foot, $4 million mansion. In May, 2 months after Joni purchased this lot, Doug's divorce was finalized. It would be finalized 4 months later in May. They had been married for 36 years, but Doug secretly divorced Lisa. He told Joni and his children, but he didn't tell any of his employees or clients at the counseling center, because after all, who would trust a divorced marriage counselor? Not only did he not tell his employees and clients, he continued wearing his wedding ring everywhere, acting as if he was married, even on TV. Only 3 years prior, in 2019, Doug had told Jonathan in an interview that Lisa still gave him butterflies after 30 years.
I guess the butterfly feelings kind of last, I guess, for the first 18 months of maybe a new relationship. Is it because those fade away?
Mine don't. I got 30 years and I'm still butterflied as soon as she walks. Serious.
That's good.
Now, in June of 2022, Joni informed Suzy and Jonathan she'd been texting with Doug Weiss. They said that one night during a family dinner, Joni excitedly got up from the table to rush out to take Doug's call. Jonathan and Suzy were taken aback as they hadn't known Doug was divorced. The Bible, which Christians adhere to as their doctrine, states that divorce is justified for 2 reasons only: adultery, aka infidelity, and abandonment. Joni told the family that Doug left Lisa because she had abandoned him. But Lisa was still physically living with Doug in their home, and even working with him at his heart-to-heart counseling facility. So the word abandoned may have been twisted by Doug and Joni. In fact, in July of 2022, 2 months after their divorce was finalized, Doug and Lisa decided to go to marriage counseling with Denise Boggs. This is supposedly because Joni said she wanted to do the honorable thing with dating Doug and make sure that their marriage couldn't be fixed. But the counseling sessions may have been pointless because that same month Joni had them go to counseling was also the same month she let Doug start his own show on the Daystar network called Healing Time with Dr. Doug Weiss. Lisa, according to Suzy, was anything but healed. Jonathan and Suzy had been supportive of Doug and Joni's burgeoning relationship. They had watched Joni grieve for months and were happy to see her finally happy again. That is, until something happened between Doug and Lisa that made Joni giddy like a schoolgirl. Suzy recalled Doug calling Joni one day, telling him how Lisa had been sobbing to Doug, begging him to take her back. Joni hung up the phone and told Suzy, "This just makes me realize what a great husband he's going to be and makes me want him more." It was at that moment Jonathan and Suzy stopped supporting the relationship between Doug and Joni. They believed that if Doug and Lisa's marriage could be repaired, that was the godly thing to do. By refusing to mend it and starting a relationship with Joni, Jonathan and Suzy believed Doug and Joni were going against their God. It's unsure how long the Joni-appointed counseling with Denise Boggs between Doug and Lisa Weiss lasted. It couldn't have lasted long, though, because it started in July, and in the first week of August, Joni and Doug were flying to New York together. But after counseling Doug and Lisa in July, Denise Boggs, who was also the Lamb family counselor, had seen enough. She emailed Jonathan and his siblings to warn them that she believed Joni was being deceived and that Doug was a wolf in sheep's clothing. Denise claimed she voiced her concern to Joni in the very beginning, but Joni wouldn't hear it and defended him. Denise wrote to Jonathan and his siblings, quote, "My perspective of Doug came after spending several days with him. I voiced to her that the issues in the first marriage needed to be confronted before going into this marriage. Your mom agreed that they would hear me out at first, but once Jimmy Evans fully approved of Doug, she told me that they would not be interested in talking with me. After spending 3 days with Doug, I am fully aware of the deep-rooted issues that caused Doug's first marriage to fail. The alarming thing is, what took the first marriage down is casually being embraced." End quote. Denise warned the Lamb siblings she believed Doug would bring down Daystar. Joni refused to listen to the counselor she'd hired to make sure Doug and Lisa's marriage couldn't be saved. Because of Denise's letter, Jonathan, his siblings, and their spouses decided to ask for a family meeting with Joni.
Okay, so after that, we saw that letter, I jumped into action mode. I got all 6 of us on a phone call together and said, hey, we need to meet Mom and talk to her about this. So the next day, went into Daystar, told my mom, hey, I'd like to meet with you, have a family meeting. She said, okay, we can do one after the show. So after the show, she came up, we met in her office, and she literally said, hey, I've got to go fly off to New York with Doug. So I'll give you each 1 minute to speak. So we each said our piece for 1 minute. And then after that, literally, she just said, I hear you, but all I hear coming from you is a spirit of fear. And she pointed at us and said, fear, 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 fear. And quickly rushed out the door to fly out to New York. So there wasn't even any type of a real conversation or consideration of our concerns. She was like, my mind's made up, and that's it.
Joni wrote about her trip to New York with Doug in her book titled Through the Storm: Courageous Faith in Turbulent Times. While on this trip, Doug said God told him to go to Tiffany's and buy Joni a heart necklace and then kiss her in front of the Empire State Building. Only 2 months later, in October of 2022, and not yet engaged, Joni made the first deposit for her and Doug's honeymoon, and she charged it all to Daystar. The full amount would be over $103,000. Yes, they spent 6 figures on a honeymoon. Then, on New Year's Eve, Doug Weiss proposed to Joni Lamb at the Broadmoor, a luxury hotel and resort for the wealthiest in Colorado Springs. But the engagement was kept secret because, remember, Doug's employees and clients didn't even know he and Lisa were divorced. Doug wouldn't even tell his employees about his divorce until March of 2023, 10 months after the divorce was finalized and 3 months after he and Joni got engaged. But Doug finally announcing his divorce caused some problems, because only 2 days later, Joni announced their engagement. Because Doug didn't tell his employees he'd been divorced for almost a year already, his employees thought the divorce had just happened, and now all of a sudden he's engaged to Joni. Throughout all this, Lisa Weiss has never spoken out. Suzy said Joni told her that Lisa was given $2 million and an NDA. In May of 2023, knowing a wedding was imminent, Jonathan decided to raise the issue that Doug lacked biblical grounds for divorce. He, Suzy, Jimmy Evans, Joni, and Doug had a closed-door meeting so Jonathan could address his concerns. The meeting did not go well as Doug began screaming.
"I'm on Daystar, and you publicly affirmed their relationship as being of the Lord. Can you do that in good conscience without having talking to Lisa to get her side of the story? Because for all you know, Doug could have just told you half-truths or one side of the story."
Well, Jonathan, I have a lot of experience, I have a lot of discernment. I could have, in talking to Doug and also with Joni, I could have discerned if he was lying in 5 minutes because I know how to talk to him. And when he said to me when we were talking and I asked him question after question after question after question, he answered every question exactly, and he never dishonored Lisa. Never threw under the bus.
But he's a pro. He's like the best of the best when it comes to like dealing with people.
You've dehumanized him.
He would know what to say.
I'm talking to Doug on the phone and I'm asking questions and he's answering every single question the way I've heard it answered over and over and over by someone who's been abused over a long period of time. And so number one. Number two is I talked to people and I asked questions because I'm not going to tell you who I talked to, but I asked questions and I got the answers. About what was happening in their relationship. And I met Lisa a couple of times. And so I was satisfied because of the conversations I had with her and him and others that in having a conversation with Lisa, because we talked about this when we met the other day, I think Rachel was asking, I know what Lisa would have said. And what it would have done is exactly what Doug said. It would have slowed it down 6 months. Lisa would have said, I tried to work on the relationship, I want the relationship. That's what I'm saying. So I have to work with people sitting in front of me and the information I have and the experience I have.
Yeah,
but again, it all comes down to trust. And, Rachel said this the other day. She said, talking about you, Suzy, she said, well, Suzy wants to say something and she has a lot more trust in you than anybody else at this table, which was obviously disrespectful. And I don't care. The great thing about being my age is I just don't care. I've got a good quality of life. You can trust my experience and my judgment, or you can't. I'm not going to sell myself, and I'm not going to defend myself. The only thing I'm going to say is this is not the first time or the 30th time.
Yeah, of course, Jimmy. And I know that talking to Lisa could have slowed it down 6 months, but would that have been a bad thing when we're all questioning every single? No, I know, but
that's their concern. They're
every son and daughter. Jimmy, can I finish?
It was about adult children in a remarriage when there's been a death, and I'm saying I give you grace for your emotions and what you're feeling, but I'm not going through what you're going through, and I've got the experience. I'm saying,
Jimmy,
you can trust and you can submit, or you can keep going through this wrangling, and that's all it is.
We need to process this out.
I'm not going to talk to Lisa. I didn't talk to Lisa, and I'm not going to defend myself on that.
Okay, but what I'm saying is, would it be the worst thing if it slowed down 6 months if every single offspring of these two individuals is questioning the validity of this marriage?
Your view is different.
No.
It's not going to change the Bible verses you quote.
No.
It's not going to change anything.
No, but again, what if there is a spark of hope that Lisa could get back with you? Wouldn't that be the best solution in the end?
Okay.
No, I'm serious. Wouldn't that be the best solution before God if you guys could get back?
But what you didn't trust is I gave 1,000% to make that possible. 1,000%. My heart cried out for her to do that. Okay, I gave it 1,000%, and you're saying, oh, well, just keep doing it. Okay, I gave it that. Okay, I gave it 1,000%. And yes, that's intensity because I've been through 30 years of being neglected. And I tried and tried and cried and prayed. Okay? This isn't, you're not scared. You're not scared of me.
I'm a little off-put by your reaction.
He acts like that when I yell.
The reaction,
It's not acting.
You're
It's
saying
him.
something again.
It's his personality.
Okay? That I have been through an incredible amount of pain. And you're saying, Doug, damn it, just suck
No, I'm
it
not.
up and try it
I'm
again.
not saying
I'm
that.
just trying to understand.
I'm just.
Why did you go to Lisa and take a given?
No, I'm just saying, wouldn't that be the most honoring thing before the Lord?
It's not honoring to be abused. It's not honoring to be abused. It's not honoring to be neglected. It's not honoring to be untouched and unloved. It's not honoring to do that. Okay? I have a clear conscience before my God who has never left me 1 second in this process and provides miracles for me to get out of that. Okay? It's not honorable to do that. You're saying just get beat up at home and suck it up because you wear the name Christian.
No, but
do it in the name of Jesus.
but can God change your heart? Can she change?
Jonathan, I pray to God you never go through the kind of pain he's been through.
I understand, but can people change?
You don't understand. You don't understand.
But can
You
people?
don't have the life experience.
I understand, but I'm saying we serve a big God. He can change. He can restore marriages. That's what we believe for as Daystar. Like that is the best outcome
I
here.
love that, Eddie, but it's not our place.
I know, but
1 month later, in June of 2023, Doug and Joni were married. Officiating the wedding was Jimmy Evans, a man Joni calls her spiritual big brother. Jimmy Evans is a pastor from the Dallas, Texas area and has been a Daystar on-air contributor many times. He was also Marcus's golfing buddy. Jimmy has his own show called The Tipping Point, where he claims to be able to prophesize and uses fear tactics to talk about the end times. Daystar and Jimmy have created several specials together. At the advice of their pastor, Jonathan and Suzy attended the wedding. Although they didn't trust Doug, they didn't want to ruin Joni's big day. The newlyweds then flew to Cabo San Lucas to enjoy their 6-figure honeymoon, where they posted an Instagram photo of them dining on the beach. Joni soon made Doug her co-host on Ministry Now, which she had been hosting solo since Marcus's death. Daystar originally uploaded a special that aired of Joni and Doug, talking about how the two of them fell in love, but Joni had it taken down. Jonathan would later say this was because of all the negative comments it was receiving, but Joni denied that being the reason. Throughout the years, Joni would have Daystar stage photo shoots for her grandchildren with all kinds of themed sets. This could be for any reason at all, whether it was a holiday or a change of season. These photos would promptly be uploaded on all their social media accounts. But Joni never let Jonathan or Suzy be around whenever the kids would have these photo shoots done, saying instead, "You need to trust me." Suzy and Jonathan did so because they had both been raised to submit to their elders no matter what, but Suzy was done trusting Joni. By now, Jonathan and Suzy had been keeping baby Lamb at home with a nanny instead of bringing her to Daystar after the incident with Pete on their Florida family vacation. Baby Lamb showed signs of distress when at Daystar, and they wanted to keep her far away from Pete. Only 1 month after Doug and Joni's wedding, when Jonathan and Suzy were hosting one of the many Daystar shows, the producer gave them a list of viewer comments to read on air. These were handpicked by Joni. One of these comments was from a viewer who praised Doug and Joni's marriage. But after learning everything about the demise of Doug and Lisa's marriage and how Joni had told Suzy Lisa was crying and begging Doug to come back, they believed Doug and Joni's marriage went against biblical mandates. Therefore, they refused to read the on-air comment about Doug. Jonathan and Suzy could have never known this one small act of defiance would be the catalyst to future events that would shake them to their core and have them fleeing their home in fear. Jonathan and Suzy refusing to read that viewer comment sent Joni on the warpath. She called Jonathan and Suzy into a meeting with Jimmy Evans, the pastor who married them. In this spiritually abusive meeting, Joni and Jimmy bullied Jonathan and Suzy for hours and told them to submit more than 100 times. This was also when Joni told Suzy she had Jonathan by the balls, and Joni and Jimmy declared Joni as the voice of God.
Because you didn't read that comment.
I'm not going to fake a personal relationship. It has to happen naturally.
Well, you're telling her what has to happen. No,
I'm telling you
she's the boss.
I'm telling you my boundary, and you make your decision from there.
I'm saying to you, Suzy, very simply, if you can't do what she wants, you have to go. It can't be both ways.
I didn't ask it to be both ways.
But what you're saying is, you're saying, at Daystar, I'm going to do my job and go home. And I don't want to be told anything other than that. Well, that's not how it works. Your job is to please her. When she has a smile on her face, you did your job. Your job is not to come and talk about God and go home. Your job is to come and please the boss and go home. So she's not pleased. She's not happy. So it just can't keep going on like this. It's been too hard. And again, she asked me the other day on the phone, she said, do you think I'm overreacting or being too hard or whatever? And I said, Joni, you have been incredibly gracious with your children through this whole situation, but this has to stop.
I just, like I said,
you submit to my authority or you don't.
Yeah, and like whatever I say to read, if I'm not comfortable, then I have to stick with my convictions.
Well, whatever you read, if you don't agree with the viewer's comment, it's not your right to agree or disagree with it. If a viewer has a comment about me or you or anybody else, it's a nice comment, that's a good thing to read it. That's not a bad thing. That have anything to do with you. You're reading a viewer comment. That's
I'm representing it. It's a lie.
You're not representing anything.
I'm reading it out.
It's
I'm
not
reading
a lie.
it.
It's not a lie.
It's a lie if I say something that I don't believe.
It has nothing to do with you.
If I say something I don't believe it.
Good man.
No, I'm not gonna just.
It has nothing to do with you. It is a viewer comment. It's not a Suzy comment. It's a viewer comment.
I can't go against my convictions in that, and I'm
then
not challenging.
Don't come back then.
Okay.
You're gone. Okay. You're fired.
That's
if
right.
you can't read a nice comment about Doug, I don't want you here.
Yeah.
You won't do the green room. You won't do anything.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm just going to seek the Lord and I'm going to pray
This is not a religious process of you going home and praying. This is a process, a very practical process, of you telling your boss whether you're behind her or not, whether you'll submit to her or not. Now, you're spiritualizing all of this, and all of the scriptures behind her, not behind you. She's the authority. She's your mother. Either way. And so, in your next job, if you leave this job and you go to your next job, trust me, whatever boss you have, you're going to disagree with 18 times more than you ever have her. And you're going to have to submit or they're going to fire you again. And so in the real world, because you've lived in a bubble, Daystar is a bubble. It is a wonderful spiritual place to work, and you've lived in a bubble. In the real world, this crap doesn't fly. Either you submit or you don't. Now, Suzy's saying no. Your wife is saying no.
I didn't say I would not submit. To me, submission is doing the job that is ministry and not having to fake a relationship
You're
with Doug.
telling the boss what your job is. You can't do that.
Faking a relationship with Doug is part of the Daystar job? That's not.
Reading a comment about Doug is a part of the job.
I cannot go against my convictions.
No, you listen. You said no. I respect that. But then I look at you, Jonathan, and I say, what about you? Because your wife said no. And you're saying you want to pray about it. There's been a lot of prayer. There's been a lot of conversations. It's time to make a decision.
Well, we just had this meeting today, so I think it's fair to be able to give you
No,
time to
I think you need to
process
tell
things.
me now. You either submit or you don't. You either submit or you don't. I'm not playing the game any longer. I'm not letting you go home and pray about it and think about it. Suzy's made her decision. Now you make your decision.
I haven't had, you didn't give me
I'm not giving
any foreknowledge of this meeting of, like I have to make a decision.
She doesn't have to. You always put the burden on her. The burden's on you. You're the employee. She's the employer. The burden's on you. And you have to make a decision.
So off the show or just off vice president, like he's losing his job? Like we have to clarify that.
Well, submission is for all those things, Suzy.
I'm just
It's not
asking.
just for on the show.
You said you might have to take some time off the show before in the meeting, so I'm clarifying that for Jonathan.
So either you say, yes, Mom, I'm submitted to you. I may not agree with you on anything, but I'm submitted to you. Or you say you're not. It's one or the other.
Just give me 24 hours to pray about it. That's all I ask, kindly, so respectfully.
I'm not going to give you 24 hours. You give me an answer now. You either submit it to me or you're not.
Now, whether you respect me or not, that's just a personal issue. But you have disrespected me in that sense.
I disagree, sir.
Yeah. And so...
I feel like I've been very patient to listen to you this whole time.
Well, you listened and rejected everything I had to say. To this day, you don't agree with that.
His opinion is an idol. He has made his opinion an idol, and the stubbornness that's attached to that.
Yeah.
And what God has gifted him with, the enemy's now using against him.
Yeah.
And they're both completely deceived. And your dad
No, but
would be so pleased. He wanted me to get married more than anyone. He told me a million times, anything ever happens to me.
But as
you
far
get
as-
married. And he loved Doug too, as well.
But as far as your relationship,
I'm trying to figure
sorry, can I
out
speak?
why you're so
Can I
stubborn.
finish?
No,
Jimmy?
No, I'm going to talk.
I didn't get to respond to
Hang on
her.
a minute. Is that I keep trying to wonder why you're so stubborn and why you argue so much. And I'm wondering if maybe you feel like you're being loyal to your dad.
Okay, I was just responding to her. So basically,
Wait a minute. Don't ignore what I just
You
said.
being loyal to your dad or God?
I'm asking you why you're being so stubborn.
I'm loyal to God.
What'd you say?
I'm loyal to God above all. Like,
Loyal to God. Okay.
Well, God wouldn't be pleased with this. at
No,
all.
God's not
God's
pleased.
not pleased. And you've opened up yourself, both of you, to demonic activity in your family and with your kids by your rebellion against me.
I don't see it
I
as
don't.
rebellion.
I don't. It's not rebellion.
It
We're
is, it is
just-
rebellion.
Yeah, you're
and
rebellion.
and
Submitted
it will,
in every
it
way.
will be recognized. I mean, you'll bring a curse upon you and your kids.
You guys keep trying to teach us, and you're just not going to.
I'm not teaching you. We're telling you.
Yeah,
where-
you're just telling. You're
what's-
trying to tell me
we're
what
expressing
reality
what I
is. I'm
feel.
just saying
Now,
you don't
you
know.
pastored for 41 years and worked with marriages. I don't think so. You have
No.
about,
I have not.
You have about a thumbnail of experience compared to
But
him
you
and
act
me.
like you do.
Right.
But you act
do
like
act.
you
You're
do.
very prideful. You're being very prideful right now.
How is it prideful? I'm just sitting here and listening. I don't
You're sitting with
understand.
a
But it is, Suzy. It really is. Related to this situation with Doug. If you take Doug out of the equation, you guys are wonderful. I love you. Never had a negative interaction with you. Related to Doug, you guys, this has brought out the worst in you. And it's revealed something about your hearts.
It has.
And what it's revealed about your hearts is, if you don't agree, you won't do it. And the reason you've done it so far is you agree. But now that you don't agree, and when Joni was talking about this situation whatever, you're fallible. And that's why you need authority.
Why do you think I gave it to God? I walked away from anything.
But we're not talking about God. We're talking about authority.
I gave it to them. Exactly. Authority, Marcus and Joni. And I let it go completely.
What about Joni?
Stand on...
What about Joni and Doug?
What about... They're married. We come do the show. I'm not going to be part of the show.
The same spirit of submission, you give it to them, you won't?
That's my point. That's since day one. I come, do my little bit, and I leave.
You will come and read a comment about that?
That's the conviction. That I'm not going to just fake a relationship that's not there. I'm just going to be authentic to myself. If that's fireable, so be it.
Have a relationship with him. Build a relationship. But you're hiding behind all this religious talk.
It's not religious.
It's religious talk.
Religious.
When you won't read this comment about Doug on the air, it says everything.
It says everything. It reveals the heart, and that is what.
But no one.
That's the revealing that has taken place. I would have never seen this in these two had Doug not come into the picture, and now I do, and I feel like God wanted me to see it for the future, and so it's disheartening because I love them both so much. I've been nothing but good to them their whole life. I mean, I birthed this child here. So Marcus would have fired them both by now. He would not have put up with it for a second. He would have said, leave. He told the kids before. He told me before. He said, don't you dare let them get away with disrespect, da-da-da-da-da. He would tell me all the time. He'd say, I will fire them in a second. So I have always been a little bit more long-suffering and grace-filled, but I'm done. So I just need to know, are you going to submit and respect my authority and let's move forward? Or are you gonna leave? Which is it?
I've been very respectful. I haven't.
No, he hasn't.
No, you have not.
You have not been respectful.
No, I mean
you have been disrespectful. You've been rude and you've been condescending. You've been prideful. You've been arrogant.
No, I haven't.
You've been unteachable.
Yeah,
you've been
have.
stubborn. You've been all of those adjectives.
I've been very patient and calm.
Jonathan, you have not been very patient. I'm just saying, I would just say, just cutting to the chase, it's not going to work. And you have been given the opportunity to say, I submit and stay, and you won't. That's what you just said.
No, I didn't say I won't. I'm
Yes,
just saying
did.
I need to pray about it.
No, you're saying you won't.
No, sir.
Yes, you did. You said, I just wish you would respect my personal conviction.
I just need to pray about it. That's all. I mean, I'm just asking, give me
That's a no.
24 hours.
That's a no.
It's not a no.
That's a no. That's a no.
It's not a no.
It's a no.
No, it's not.
It's a no.
It's a no.
No, it's not.
It's
Yes,
a
it
no.
is. It is.
I submit to you.
You're saying on my terms.
Okay, that's all I want to hear. That's all I want to hear is I submit to you, Mom, and we'll move forward, and you can trust me.
And you can't read a comment about Doug, and you know that.
I'm sorry?
You cannot read a comment about Doug, and you know that. If tomorrow you were on Ministry Now and you had to read a comment about Doug, would you? The same comment you didn't read?
Oh, if I had to submit to her, then absolutely.
That's what he just said. I submit to you, Mom.
So you would read a comment. The comment y'all wouldn't read, you would now read.
Oh, I mean...
That's what he's saying.
See, now you're in trouble with her.
So now you're
Why are you in trouble?
I'm not-
You're making me some bad guy.
I'm not in trouble
you
with her.
can
I'm
be.
just...
She said
Just
no,
speak
you
your
are
mind.
bad.
I'm
you
telling
are bad, Suzy. You've got him by the balls, and you know it. And
Wow,
that's
babe.
exactly
Babe,
what
they're
you do.
really scary. They think horrible
No,
things.
no. That's not
I
the
love
case
you
at
by
all.
the balls.
And other people
Who
see it. You
talks
see it
like
in your eyes
this?
right now, and you look at him like
Who
you gave him a
talks?
look.
I gave him a look of pity. Like I'm trying to. You're cornering him. This is so evil. What is happening?
No, what's evil
And
is
you're
you.
telling me that I've
What's
got him
evil
by the
is you and the
balls.
spirit
So-
that's driving you, and the things you've done, the things you've
Horrible.
said, the things you've written, the people that you've talked to, the people who've told me things you said that are disgusting.
Like what?
That is what evil.
Like what?
You know, Suzy.
What? I don't.
You
Tell me.
know. Oh, please, don't even try it.
What are
okay?
this?
Just
What are?
don't.
Can you tell me what those things are?
No, I'm not, because you know what they are.
I have
I
no
don't.
idea.
Jimmy, you were there in the meeting with the children. You heard what all she said. You told me what
Tell
she
me
said.
some of the things.
We don't.
Well,
Why do we have to repeat what you said? You know what you said.
Suzy, the thing is...
Everything I
the
said
whole-
in good
the
conscience,
whole
so I don't know
conversation-
what's disgusting.
The whole conversation gets down to you're not submitted. Now, you've admitted it, so I'm good with you. You've admitted you won't. Okay. Now it's down to you. And you won't. You always come back to the qualification of the personal conviction. And so I said, if you're on TV tomorrow, if you're on ministry now, and you're asked
I can't
to
even
read,
look at you.
See, and that's the enemy right there. I can't even look at you.
Because now it's the
Yes, it
bolt.
is. Yes, it
Because
is.
they say I got you. Oh, it's so crazy.
But the point being, whatever she says moving forward is God. Is okay, God, she's my boss. Whatever you say, I'll do. It is. She is God's authority in this place, and your job is to do what she says, not your way, but her way, until she's pleased. And she is saying, Doug, her husband, there are going to be times, first of all, she wants you to be kind to him and respectful in the way that pleases her. She wants you to be able to read a comment.
Suzy refused to go against her convictions and was promptly fired. After the meeting, Jonathan and Suzy went home in shock. It was in this same month that Rebecca came over to their house to wash Suzy's feet, a sign of respect in Christianity, and she told her that she would always serve her. If you remember from part 2, JW and Rebecca had written a letter to Jonathan telling him they were disturbed with how Pete was behaving around baby Lamb and that they were no longer allowing Pete around their own children. But it wouldn't be long before Jonathan and Suzy's relationship with JW and Rebecca became strained. After that meeting, JW and Rebecca begged Suzy to just come back and read that comment so everything could go back to normal. But instead, Jonathan informed Joni that he would not return to any on-air program at Daystar without Suzy. Not long after that, JW and Rebecca were also told to submit by signing an NDA, which they did. Lines in the sand had been drawn, and all the siblings grew detached. After all, Rachel and Rebecca's mortgages were through Daystar, not a bank. Jonathan was the only Lamb child who didn't have his mortgage through Daystar. Doug and Joni were now in full control of a $1 billion tax-free organization that had just been divided in two. The following month in August, Jonathan and Suzy had a private meeting with Tom Callender. Tom Callender is a member of Daystar's board. In fact, the board isn't much of a board at all. It's more in name only, being that the entire board is made up of only Joni, Jonathan, and Tom Callender. Now Jonathan and Suzy were coming to him out of desperation. They informed him of the meeting they had with Joni and how Suzy had been fired. They believed they had biblical grounds to not read that viewer comment, as they were just there to do their job and not support what they believed to be an unsanctified marriage. Tom agreed with them and said he would talk to Joni about this, and as soon as he did, Tom changed his tune and sided with Joni. Jonathan said when he questioned Tom on why he flipped, Tom said Joni threatened him and he was scared Doug would come after him. Here's Jonathan and Suzy recounting that meeting and how quickly Tom turned.
And we left his home that night thinking, okay, this is great. We've got someone that is going to ensure that Daystar is going to be going down the right path, that we will be able to continue forward. But then the next morning, it's like everything changed. He told us that he needed to meet with us, and I still remember that breakfast meeting that we had. I couldn't even eat because I was just so sickened. He had completely done a 180-degree flip, and he told us that we had to accept the marriage, and if we can't accept the marriage, we would have to leave.
And this is of Joni and Doug.
Right.
Well, he got a call that night after, so we spent the day with him, and him and his wife are very, very loving. They reaffirmed all our biblical beliefs. Yeah. They said all the red flags they saw. Again, we're not thinking about the succession plan. We're not thinking about the future of Daystar. All we went there was because the board was Joni, Jonathan, and Tom. And Joni obviously had just fired me and threatened Jonathan's job. The only other member was Tom. So we go to meet with Tom because a lot of friends advised us, he's the other board member. He needs to know the truth. So we sit down with him, talk about the Bible. He teaches people at his church the Word of God. And it was a really anointed time. We were like, okay, we're of one mind and one spirit. And so everything was wonderful until he got a call that night. He told us the next morning he got a call from Joni that night, and that he said he completely changed. And now he said, you know what? The Word of God actually is not black and white. There's many different ways to interpret things, and you need to have an open mind to interpret things different ways. Immediately, red flag. And I was like, I check out, peace out. I'm good. Thank God I'm fired. I'm good. And it was a long struggle for Jonathan, though. He kept hoping. I mean, you can talk about your part, but for me, I was done.
Well, we were just completely shocked that someone could flip 180 degrees just from overnight. And so whatever my mom did, I don't know if she threatened him or what.
He said that she did.
Yeah, he was just a different man.
Wait, did he say that?
He said, I'm scared for my life. Doug might come after me. And then he said, which we were kind of like, is he just saying things? This is a weird thing to say. Wow. And then he said, if there's any drama, I'm just going to resign.
Yeah. And ever since that point, he's basically been doing whatever my mom says.
Jonathan kept his head down behind the scenes, but viewers were beginning to wonder why they weren't seeing him and Suzy on TV. So much so that Jonathan ended up making a statement on his Instagram, saying with a clear and definite no that he and Suzy were not leaving Daystar and that he would never walk away from Daystar, but he didn't have a timeline for when they would return to television. Although Suzy had been fired, she was still earning her regular salary while being a stay-at-home mom while Jonathan walked into a lion's den every day. Suzy hadn't asked to keep being paid, but Joni hadn't cut her off yet. Jonathan and Suzy had lawyered up, and it seemed like there could be some legal ramifications, as Suzy could say she was wrongfully terminated because reading that viewer comment went against her beliefs and was not a part of her job description. Only 8 days after making that social media post, Jonathan was given Joni's 13 stipulations for him and Suzy to return to on-air roles. Some of these stipulations involved keeping quiet about their opinions about Joni's marriage, and having to get approval from Joni, Tom Callender, and Daystar's CFO before posting on social media about Daystar. Number 9 read, Suzy has posts on social media that have no names but can be interpreted as referring to the sabbatical, Joni, Joni's position at Daystar, the marriage that affects Daystar, and must be deleted. The following one reads, Jonathan must make an approved statement that expresses support for Joni, the sabbatical is over, he's glad to be back, and is returning to ministry now. The last few stipulations demanded that Jonathan and Suzy destroy any and all recordings they have of Joni, specifying that Suzy deletes any recordings of comments Joni had shared with her about sex and marriage involving Doug. In return, Joni would allow Jonathan and Suzy to return to ministry now. They also wouldn't be forced to read any statements endorsing Doug and Joni's marriage. But a friend of Jonathan's had privately reached out to him after he had lunch with Joni. He said that during the entire 2-hour lunch, Joni repeatedly slandered Suzy, saying she had Jonathan by the balls and had a Jezebel spirit. Usually in a very sexist manner, some Christians will call any woman they don't like a Jezebel, or say she has a Jezebel spirit. In their holy book, Jezebel was the daughter of an evil and murdering false god. Jezebel became like her father and was also a power-hungry murderer. She's considered one of the baddest girls of the Bible. But more often than not in Christianity, the name Jezebel is given to any woman who dares to stand up for herself or acknowledge the truth that others want hidden. And being that there is a patriarchal hierarchy and women are not equal to men in Christianity, the word Jezebel gets directed at women far more than men are called an Ahab or told they have an Ahab spirit. Ahab was Jezebel's wicked husband. So now Jonathan is finding out Joni's calling Suzy a Jezebel to other people while providing him with a list of 13 rules he has to follow to protect Daystar and thus protect Joni. Since the contentious meeting that Jonathan and Suzy recorded at the advice of their lawyer, Joni had been telling Jonathan she wanted to take steps to better their relationship. But after finding out Joni was slandering his wife, Jonathan knew his mother was only giving him lip service and didn't care about progressing their battered relationship. This isn't surprising when you consider that in highly controlled religious families, most things are performative. In September of 2023, Suzy was at home one day when she noticed a man taking pictures of her. Another time, she felt like she was being watched at the grocery store, and she was right.
So that car's been following us for a while, guys. I can't see the license plate, if anyone. I'm just gonna send it to Katie and Kenyon and Ash.
I'll look for the license plate.
Can y'all read the license plate number, guys? Jonathan's about to pull into a gas station and confront him.
It's TMM2176.
Okay. Got that? Okay, let's see.
Not only were she and the kids being followed, Jonathan was too, and he also got it on video.
Who are you? I'm an investigator. Who are you?
Who are you hired by?
I can't disclose that.
Okay. Well, I don't authorize you to follow me.
That's okay. We're on public streets. I can follow you wherever I want to.
Okay. Well, thank you for confirming you're an investigator.
You're welcome. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Jameson. Have a good one.
After looking up this man's info, they learned the license plate was registered to a man named Jameson Bradley Parker, a private investigator. While he wasn't a Daystar employee, Jonathan and Suzy believed it was Joni who hired him. In October, Jonathan countered his mother's 13 stipulations with a letter, calling it overreaching and missing essential terms needed to move forward. Jonathan stated the whole thing began because of Joni's need to control their biblical convictions to suit her personal choices, and that their values would not be controlled or dictated. Jonathan said he and Suzy were willing to move forward and put everything behind them if given security, transparency, and certainty about their futures at Daystar. He wanted a new contract that spelled out his future role as the president of Daystar, but Joni wasn't about to give Jonathan what he wanted. With Marcus dead, any promises that had been made when he was alive were now gone with the wind. Jonathan was told they would discuss everything in another meeting the following month, and not until then. In the meantime, betrayal was in the air at Daystar. Knowing his mother was trashing him and Suzy behind their backs and having his family followed, Jonathan no longer trusted her on anything. One day, he felt like he needed to check the Daystar security cameras, and this is when he saw the head of Daystar security, a man named Shannon Kelly, open the trunk of his car and reach around inside. Jonathan told the Roy's report it was the first time in Daystar's nearly 30-year history that the ministry had put a tracker in a company vehicle. Jonathan confronted Shannon Kelly, asking if he placed a tracker in his car, but Shannon denied it. Jonathan then took his car to the dealership to have them find and remove the tracker, which they did, as you can see it here in Jonathan's hand. It wasn't long after that Joni's assistant called to inform him that trackers had been put in all the company cars after Marcus had died. But Jonathan was vice president and had access to every single one of Daystar's expense reports, which showed the trackers weren't purchased until 1 month before Jonathan saw the security feed. Joni would later lie publicly about this incident.
They said that, we're fearing for our life. We were in these undisclosed locations. Someone put a tracker on their car, like the Daystar Mafia. So I want you to just, address that before we go to the last thing.
Well, I'm sure they were completely safe because no Daystar employee was following them. There was a tracker on the car because it was a Daystar car that he was driving. And I have a tracker on my car. And we do that on all the Daystar vehicles. And how that happened is my dad was visiting, and this is before he passed away, and he had a little bit of dementia. And he drove, my dad used to work here years ago, but he had retired. But he came and he was driving one of the Suburbans while they were here visiting. It's an older Suburban that we have. And he got lost. And we didn't have any way to find out where he was, and he didn't have his phone. And they were about to put out one of those alerts, for someone who has dementia or whatever. And he ended up talking to someone in a I believe it's a coffee shop, who recognized that he was lost, and he remembered his number. He had left his phone at home, and this lady called his number and said, "Hey, I think your dad's here." And that's how we found him. So then we just put a tracker in all the vehicles so we could keep up with.
Okay, wow. So the way they gave me the interview was the tracker was only on his car, and it was after all this stuff happened. But you're saying every car has the tracker.
Well, actually, this was Marcus's car, and so I allowed him to drive the car, and so they put a tracker on the car just because. All of the vehicles had trackers, and for whatever reason, we wanted to make sure that every vehicle had one on it.
A little over a week later, Jonathan was ambushed into another meeting demanding he sign an NDA or lose his executive position and be removed from the board. Fortunately, Jonathan recorded the entire thing.
So anyway, you came over and...
Jonathan, we'll talk about this. We need to stick with with your points that we talked about discussing. We need to keep order, and then we will discuss it. We don't need to intertwine all these other conversations. We can have the conversation. Let's let Tom continue.
Submit to the authority of the board here, and let's move through the agenda, okay?
I'm trying to.
As a board member.
This is part of the setting up the process.
Yeah. What John was doing, John, just to make sure I understand, is that a letter, we want to make sure that you understood that we're not going to do that. That your first paragraph.
I'm sorry?
He's addressing the first paragraph.
Okay, yes, sir.
He's addressing the first paragraph of your email.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's all that's doing. As he said at the end of the sentence, there's other things that you have in here that the board has to consider.
Right.
Okay, but right now what he's wanting to say is that first paragraph there, nobody's asking you to do that.
Right.
Yeah, very first. See that? So now we're into the rest of it.
Okay.
So that's what the purpose of that letter was.
Okay.
To make sure that you clearly understood that we're not going to ask you to do that.
Okay.
So now we address the rest of the rest of the things.
Okay. You sent us a letter requesting some actions, okay? Number one, you requested a contract, okay? And we're going to deal with these one at a time. Nobody has ever had a contract with Daystar under any kind. Daystar has operated and chosen to operate as a free will employment company, okay? And we're going to continue, the board is going to continue to recommend and follow a free will employment company. So to deal with your contract request, there is no way that we could ever adhere to that request, okay?
Yeah, Marcus, what Dad did one mother that we know what Daystar has. We're an at-will state and we're at-will company.
And of course, I would never even have a crazy idea to even have a contract, except that we were put into this position that we're in, where we were.
You understand that
potential
the position of the board.
Threatened to be fired for not reading a card.
Oh, position of Daystar. Well,
so, given that there is insecurity related to, you could lose your
okay, there has been no
employment
action
for something as petty as that.
There's been no action as far as employment or as far as your income is concerned.
Right.
For the call for the situation that that letter resolves.
Right.
So that letter is now that is resolved. Okay. Now, so one of the other things you asked to guaranteeing you the presidency, okay, of Daystar in your request.
Well, that would be part of the contract, but that's already
that now. We had a secession article sent out.
Right.
Okay. And you and your mother signed it. I did not. Okay, it's never been signed, so it's not in effect at all. In fact, Joni, if because of the circumstances you have, if you change your mind, you can withdraw your signature if you want to. Okay, but that is not in effect by any stretch of the imagination. And my recommendation would be that we postpone that whole thing until a later date. But I want you to understand there is no resolution that spells out secession.
I remember my father specifically asked for everyone to reply in the affirmative, the board members. So
But that was his will, but
there would
it's
be
never been
there would
passed.
be an email from you replying in the affirmative.
But we did not
which you
pass
confirmed to me whenever we met in Montgomery, Alabama. You actually showed
let me just be honest.
You showed me your phone and you said, Jonathan, this is the last email I got from Marcus,
still have it.
and I'm going to do my best to make sure
I am. Let me tell you where I was, okay? And I'm just going to be honest with you.
Okay.
And I hope y'all will just grant me this leeway for a minute. My heart, when you came to Montgomery, was totally to believe everything you said, to be completely on your side, okay? To be able to give you the opportunity to grow and understand what a board position was and to grow into the position where you could be president. That was my absolute heart. I had nothing in the world except belief in Jonathan. Now, I'm just going to be honest with you. The last 6 months has caused me to totally reevaluate that decision, because I have seen a young man that is creating turmoil creating turmoil within the company by not supporting his mother, not supporting the president,
I've always supported
who has agreed to do certain things and then done something just the exact opposite. And I don't want to get into the minutia, okay?
Well, it's good to clarify what made you change your mind.
Because honestly, I can't trust you. Now, I'm just going to tell you like this, I can't trust you.
With Jonathan refusing to sign an NDA, Joni knew her actions could be brought to light, and now is the time we need to flash back to 2021, when in part 2, I told you that after the beach house incident involving Pete and baby Lamb, in which Marcus and Joni protected Pete and wouldn't even hear Jonathan and Suzy out, Jonathan and Suzy were going to report Pete to the police, but in an effort to protect Daystar, Marcus lied to Jonathan and Rebecca's husband, JW, in a private meeting where he told them Pete had been forensically cleared and they could all rest assured that Pete had not harmed Suzy and Jonathan's daughter. But 2 days after the meeting in which Jonathan was pressured to sign an NDA, he and Suzy received a call from Denise Boggs. Denise Boggs is a minister and author and had been the Lamb's family counselor for many years. She was also the one brought in to help mediate the aftermath of the beach house incident. She had heard some things about what was happening at Daystar and wanted to call and see how Jonathan and Suzy were doing. They confided in her what was going on, and it was during this phone call that Jonathan and Suzy found out Pete had not been forensically cleared. Denise didn't know that they didn't know this, and when Marcus shut down the investigation with her and a children's counselor Denise had brought in, Marcus told them it was all being handled and they didn't need them anymore. For over 2 years, Jonathan and Suzy had believed Marcus's big lie, a lie that Joni was aware of. Upon hearing this, Suzy and Jonathan immediately told baby Lamb's counselor, who called CPS. CPS then called the police, and in November of 2023, the case for baby Lamb was reopened. With Jonathan having removed the tracker and refusing to sign an NDA, Joni was in retaliation mode. Suzy's parents had worked at Daystar for several years, but on November 30th, only 2 weeks after Jonathan's meeting, Suzy's mother was told her position had been eliminated effective immediately. Then, right before Christmas, Daystar removed Suzy's father from his role and demoted him to a lesser-paying position, cutting his salary by $20,000. That same month in December, 6 months after marrying Joni and 9 months after Doug told his employees that he and Lisa were divorced, he uploaded a video titled, "How to Help My Wife Heal from Betrayal Trauma."
If it's a sex addiction or infidelity, you might really want to spend some quality time watching and doing the workbook on helping my spouse, helping her heal. Helping her heal explains what's happened to your wife and it walks you through what you can do. Learn the understanding exercise, learn how to validate her pain, learn how to stay with her, learn how not to minimize what she's sharing with you, and to take responsibility and to hear her heart. These are skills you wouldn't have as a man, especially if you're a man who's an addict or done infidelity. You wouldn't be mature enough to have these skills. You're going to have to learn what you need to know.
Distressed, Jonathan and Suzy and their 2 children tried to get through the holidays, but things were heavy. Joni remained busy and unbothered. Even with everything she had done to Suzy and Jonathan over the last 6 months, Joni was still posting multiple pictures to her social media of the staged photo shoots of their son and baby Lamb, writing captions about how excited her grandchildren were to be getting ready for Christmas. But excited was not a word anybody in Jonathan and Suzy's family would use. Because of the reopened case, baby Lamb was having to go through everything again in counseling, and she was breaking out in eczema all over her tiny body. Joni and Doug celebrated their first Christmas together as husband and wife. In January of 2024, she and Doug vacationed in Australia. JW and Rebecca seemed to be kept behind the scenes at Daystar. If Joni was feeling vindictive because they wrote that letter warning of Pete being inappropriate around children, one could say it showed on her social media and who she chose to platform. In all of 2024, Joni posted pictures and/or video of Rachel 20 times. Rebecca was shown 5 times. For Rachel's husband's birthday, Joni lavished Joshua with a tribute of praise, writing how he was the best husband to Rachel and an amazing father to their 2 children. For Rebecca's husband's birthday, she wrote that she hoped JW had the best day. For Rachel and Joshua's wedding anniversary, she wrote a long caption celebrating their 8 years together, how beautiful their wedding day was, and how God writes the best love stories. She wrote that Joshua had been the answer to her and Marcus's prayers for Rachel. For Rebecca and JW's wedding anniversary, she posted nothing. In 2024, she posted multiple videos of Joshua, but none of JW. Joni also excitedly shared a video with a fake newspaper about how she hit 100,000 followers on Instagram. If there was one thing she paid attention to and curated, it was her social media. In April of 2024, Joni published a book titled Through the Storm. Joni shared an excerpt in an article for Charisma News that read, quote, "When Doug came into my life, it felt like a refreshing rain saturating the drought in my soul and bringing a sense of newness. Yet his arrival definitely shook things up. Along with the excitement, there was some turbulence and downed limbs, so to speak, that had to be taken care of. But it was so worth it because of the refreshing new life." End quote. Were the downed limbs that had to be taken care of Jonathan and Suzy? Daystar surprised Joni with a book release party. In the video Joni posted to her Instagram, employees can be seen holding cutouts of Joni's face. Joni claimed her book sold out on Amazon, which means nothing if you remember what happened with her previous book, Surrender All, in Part 1. After looking through Daystar's financial reports, NPR found the company had spent $100,000 to buy Joni's first book. In turn, those sales pushed it onto a bestsellers list. Only 2 days after Joni's book release, Jonathan was demoted, blocked from the green room, and his $250,000 annual salary was reduced by 40%. He was put on a performance improvement plan with his car and company perks stripped away from him. The now former vice president was put in charge of watching over the Daystar cafeteria. Not long after, Suzy's father was terminated. Both of Suzy's parents were now jobless. It was around this time Suzy received a phone call one day from someone who said "death to Suzy" before hanging up. Scared and hurt, she believed it was a member of the Daystar security team, and the couple called the police. Because of the fact that Jonathan had found out he was being tracked and spied on, an officer spent the night outside their home to monitor the situation. That summer, the couple spent much of their time outside of Texas, as they feared they weren't safe in their own home. By that August, they decided to light the match that would bring Daystar to its knees. They contacted the Roy's Report and gave an interview, along with several hours of recorded audio and documentation to back things up. This was all done secretly, and Julie Roys agreed to not contact Daystar until Jonathan and Suzy said it was safe to do so. Until then, Julie spent 3 months investigating Daystar behind the scenes, verifying the information that had been given to her, and questioning former employees. In the meantime, it was now October of 2024, and Joni hadn't spoken to Suzy or their children all year. On the birthday of Jonathan and Suzy's son, Joni suddenly said she wanted to come see him and give him a gift. But Jonathan told her in no uncertain terms that she was not allowed over since she had been slandering them and telling people Suzy was a Jezebel. But Joni, not one to listen to her adult children, showed up at their house anyway, making sure to cover the doorbell camera with her hand. Suzy found out by her son coming into the bathroom saying, "Mommy, she just showed up at our door." After having been tracked and followed, Jonathan and Suzy had been on pins and needles for over a year now, and this scared Suzy. Joni left before Suzy could approach her. The following month, the Lambs used the private Daystar jet to fly to Trump's victory party. This trip cost an estimated $38,000 in fuel and violates the Johnson Amendment, which prohibits tax-free organizations like churches and religious nonprofits from supporting political candidates or any political campaign activity. Later in the month, after Jonathan and Suzy gave Julie Roys the go-ahead, the Roy's Report contacted Daystar on Friday, November 15th, to tell them what they knew and get their sides of the story. Jonathan and Suzy knew this would escalate things and had already packed a bag and stayed somewhere else for that weekend. The very next day, a Saturday, Jonathan and Suzy watched on their doorbell camera as a man with a bulletproof vest and a weapon in his holster walked up to their front door and taped something on it. It was a termination notice informing them that Jonathan was terminated immediately and would no longer have access to his email or Daystar's property and facilities. Jonathan said it was the first time in the company's history that an employee was fired on a weekend. One of the questions the Roy's report asked of Daystar was about the polygraph test that Pete supposedly took in summer of 2024, and if they would show documentation that a polygraph had been taken and what the results were. It's unknown if, because Baby Lamb's case was reopened, that's why Pete took the polygraph, as this was 3 years after the beach house incident. But Daystar never provided any documentation to the Roy's report, instead only saying that Pete had passed with flying colors. But Jonathan made the point that if Pete had really taken a polygraph and passed, does it mean much when Joni's husband Doug owns his own polygraph company? Could he have coached Pete on how to pass? Could Pete have been given multiple polygraph tests and picked the result they liked? A polygrapher that Julie Roy's contacted said that yes, people can be coached to pass polygraphs. As soon as the Roy's report exclusive article went live, chaos ensued. Daystar immediately threatened the news outlet and demanded they retract the article, which they refused to do. Laura Lynn Tyler Thompson was an on-air personality on Daystar Canada, who said when she questioned Joni about the allegations, Joni called Jonathan a pathological liar. But Laura felt Joni wasn't being honest. She also didn't like how Joni didn't go straight to the police after the news of Baby Lamb's essay. Laura became the first broadcaster to pull her show from the Daystar network. With the audio recordings of Joni and her henchmen's verbal assault and the spiritual abuse against Jonathan and Suzy, one by one, other Daystar programmers pulled their shows off the network. Jimmy Evans received so much backlash after calling Joni the voice of God that he also pulled his show off Daystar, saying he was excited to focus solely on his company and online show, The Tipping Point. Joni then made a 2.5-minute video statement, accusing Jonathan of being jealous that she became president after Marcus's death. Not once did she mention Baby Lamb and the accusations against Pete.
Hello, everyone. I wanted to take a few minutes today to speak from my heart to the Daystar family and friends. Recently, Daystar made the decision to terminate my son Jonathan Lamb's employment. That decision was not taken lightly. It followed a 15-month review of Jonathan's performance and his refusal to take any steps to satisfy a detailed performance improvement plan put in place. He also refused my offer to participate in a formal mediation to resolve grievances in a biblical and professional manner. Rather than take any steps to improve his performance at Daystar, it seems clear now that Jonathan was focused on fabricating a smear campaign. You see, Jonathan was extremely disappointed that he was not named the future president of Daystar following the death of his father and my husband, Marcus Lamb, despite the fact that Marcus had given a clear directive to the family and to the board that I would succeed him as president. Jonathan's disappointment in not getting his way only deepened when I married Dr. Doug Weiss, who has been such a blessing to me, the rest of my family, and Daystar. I can tell you that as a mother, as a grandmother, this situation saddens me deeply, and it grieves my heart because I love my family. I love all my children. I love my grandchildren. I love the work we've done together for so many years. And I had hoped that we could have resolved the situation in private. But now, Jonathan has given me no choice except to speak out. Everyone knows that we have dedicated our lives to spreading the love of Jesus. And to see it attacked by my son Jonathan and his wife is truly heartbreaking. I want to assure you that all the allegations that are circulating against myself and my late husband are completely false. We have already begun to take legal steps to defend ourselves, and we will address the accusations in a God-honoring way. We stand firm in our faith, knowing that God is with us, and his purpose for Daystar is far greater than any present challenge we may be facing. While this attack is very painful and wrong, I know that our battle is not against flesh and blood, but against a spiritual enemy who seeks to destroy and divide no matter what the cost. I want to ask you for your prayers. Thank you for your continued love and support. Our team here at Daystar will keep you updated. Again, thank you for your prayers. God bless you.
As news spread, loyal Daystar viewers couldn't believe what they heard when listening to Jonathan's secret recorded audio, which is legal to do in Texas. Many commented that it was a good thing he recorded it because they would have never believed Joni Lamb would behave in such a manner. She truly had her audience fooled, but the wool was pulled over their eyes no more, and viewers began demanding their donations back. Joni refused to be interviewed by The Roy's Report and Laura Lynn Tyler Thompson, who has covered this case extensively. Instead, she was interviewed by a YouTuber who she knew would only ask the questions she wanted asked. Marcus Rogers ended up deleting the interview off his channel and turning off his comments after it received so much backlash. You may remember in part 2 when we discussed the beach house incident when Baby Lamb went upstairs to get changed into her bathing suit and Pete followed her. I stated that Suzy yelled out to Jonathan to have him go catch Pete because she knew if she was the one who said something, she wouldn't be believed, and she was right. Joni used gaslighting to make Suzy appear crazy.
There had been some very peculiar things that have happened at this particular trip. I remember when we were at the grocery store, all the family was there because when we go, we always go to the grocery store and get food for breakfast and that kind of thing. And I remember Suzy was standing in line and she began to murmur under her breath and start talking about a man that was behind her. And she was getting angrier and angrier, and we were like, what, what's going on? And she, she said, he was looking at me, in the store. And the man is like on his phone, not knowing what in the world she's saying or doing. We were just trying to calm her down. So it was just a weird dynamic that was going on with her from the beginning.
Yeah, I don't appreciate my mom
It's okay.
painting the picture that Susie's a little crazy.
Okay.
That's just
It's okay.
a total distraction of trying to take away from the main story to hurt her credibility.
So nothing happened at the grocery store?
No, I don't. This is crazy. I feel weird even dignifying that with a response. Me imagining a man who's looking at me. So because I saw Pete following her, they need to make this, that I'm just imagining things. Crazy.
If that's true, that would be definition of gaslighting.
Now you see why I said I had to send Jonathan up there? Because they were said to Suzy.
Thankfully, I was the one that witnessed it. Otherwise, they may have denied that even happened.
He wasn't even there.
Yeah.
As the months went on and Suzy and Jonathan did more interviews as well as doing Q&As on their own channel, their support grew rapidly. More and more Daystar programmers announced they were pulling their shows from the network, citing the allegations. And yet, through all of this, at the time of this recording, Joni has refused to allow a third-party investigation to happen, stating that an internal investigation was done and cleared Pete of any wrongdoings. But we know this is a lie because Marcus lied about Pete being cleared. In January of 2025, Joni uploaded a video of her and Doug at a shooting range. This falls outside the norm of what content is normally posted to her Instagram. In the caption, she wrote, "Taking aim at the things that need to go." Jordan Easley and Audra Easley shows us how to hit the target on wokeness and cancel culture. It's time to stand strong, stay grounded in truth, and fight back with faith and boldness. While I can't play the audio of the video for you due to the music they used, I can tell you that Joni said, "Canceling cancel culture," and Doug says, "Canceling censorship," before they take aim. Online, people began noticing Doug's appearance was different. In one video, he was having trouble staying upright, even while sitting down. And in multiple other videos, the man who was once coherent and well-spoken has begun slurring his words.
That's, I want to simply buy what you got.
Yes, and then like to conquer so that somebody to be conquered.
Well, that's why you have like these large body part people selling tires and toothpaste and crazy stuff. That's why. Because men won't stop to look at a toothpaste, but they'll stop and look at holiness. And see, the world doesn't know that it's holy. They don't know that they're holy, so them exposing holiness is really easy for them. Okay, what's sadder to me is that the men in the church don't know women are holy.
Yes, it's true, because they're not taught.
You see what I'm saying? They're not taught that women are holy. They're not taught to protect and to reverence them. And so what happens is the church has become more corrupt and more vulnerable and not leading the charge on protecting women.
You want to hit that seed as soon as it starts showing up. So if you're a woman and you're being verbally abused, let somebody know, but also start some counseling process, get in some accountability, get him in front of your pastor, so that you can start moving this, so it doesn't get to become what you've experienced, which was all kinds of abuse, physical abuse, and then as your story goes into him, infidelity and multiple situations.
Oh my goodness.
Probably pornography and all that stuff. And
So you had Trey.
Here's what's happened so far at the time of this recording. Jonathan and Suzy still have their house, although they stated at the 2025 Restore conference that their friends in church had been helping them out financially, with one friend paying their mortgage one month. 19 programmers have pulled their shows off the Daystar network, including Joyce Meyer and Jesse Duplantis. The well-known broadcasters still on Daystar's network are Joel Osteen, Kenneth Copeland, T.D. Jakes, and Paula White-Cain, to name a few. Daystar has still refused to have a third-party investigation take place, and when asked in an interview about the Roy's Report investigation, Joni called it slander by a, quote, low-level blogger. Once it was made known that Joni put her six-figure honeymoon on Daystar's credit card, she said she paid it back in full. On March 3rd of 2025, it came out that after Marcus died, Joni's compensation jumped by 140%. Previously, it had been $436,000. After Marcus died, it jumped up to over $1 million annually. The second highest paid employee, CFO Arnold Torres, earns $300,000. Being that Daystar is considered a ministry and is tax exempt, Joni also receives a housing allowance. Speaking of money,
For years, the public has known that Daystar TV president Joni Lamb lives a life of great wealth and luxury. But last month, the Trinity Foundation reported that Lamb owns 6 residential properties in 3 states, worth about $11 million, revealing just how wealthy the Christian TV mogul is. Now, the Roy's Report has confirmed that Lamb owns a 7th home in a 4th state, bringing the worth of her real estate holdings acquired through Christian ministry to $11.7 million.
As soon as Doug walked Joni down the aisle, he began receiving a 6-figure salary. His official title is consultant. Pete is still working at Daystar and being featured regularly on Joni's Instagram and lavished with praise. Baby Lamb's case is still open, but no charges have been made. Jonathan and Suzy have not spoken to Rebecca and JW, as they have made clear where their loyalties now lie. Rachel has vigorously defended Pete on her YouTube channel and Twitter and called Jonathan and Suzy liars. Joshua Brown has stayed silent. Daystar is now working with a woman who calls herself an apostle. Her name is Catherine Crick, and some have accused her of leading a cult. She has recently been a guest several times on Daystar's different shows. Lisa Weiss has stayed silent about everything, and 2 families remain torn apart. If much more happens, I will make a part 4 in the future, but for now, this has been the rise and fall of Daystar.